Mr. Cook's just woken me up and reminded me to turn my microphone on. So again, welcome to those of you out in the world of the internet and in the public gallery, and welcome to our deliberations today. I just want to reiterate again the process that we are working through the draft district plan, taking it through to a recommendation from this subcommittee to be considered by the whole of council, and if passed, it will become the proposed district plan that has a slightly more formal consultation process involved. Again, any councillors are entitled to sit and contribute to this meeting, but only members of the subcommittee will vote. So I'll start off. Do we have any apologies?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do not have Councillor Blackler at this time, so we'll put an apology in for him. Thank you.
Oh, so moved. So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins, seconded by Councillor Percival. Thank you. All those in favour? Carried. By way of an explanation of business, councillors, do we have any declarations of interest today?
Mr. Chair, is this a continuation of the meeting or is this a new meeting?
No, it's a continuation.
Because I mean, we've done all the declarations of interest and various things already. So it's yeah, I just note that it's unusual when reconvening a meeting to go through all of those things every time. But you know, anyone's free to declare an interest if something changes in its way. But we yeah, that should have been done at the start with regard to any particular aspect of the discussions we're having.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I have been asked to separate these minutes out, so I just would like to review it each time so that there is a particular declaration. If it's been carried forward, then I just need to be able to minute it. It's a difficult meeting to minute this one, so assistance would be appreciated. Thank you.
All right, there's no declarations of interest anyway, so we'll just maybe just take a minute to explain to members the mechanical process that we're going to go through with mapping later today. If you have a look, there's a whiteboard behind us. What we're going to try and do is identify maps where we have a consensus and an agreement, and conversely identify those that we want to question, so that we do have 77 maps to get through. So the process, once we start, will be further explained up on the board. We do also have a carryover. You will recall at the last meeting, we had two Schedule 8s, when in fact one of them should have been a Schedule 7. So I bring to your attention the addendum to the minutes, which now has the ONFs as Schedule 7, not Schedule 8. Mr. Campbell, have you anything to say on that matter, or it's? Thank you. So do we have someone prepared to move Schedule 7 as to formalise, because we dealt with it as a Schedule 8 or 8A last time, so.
So this is just simply, we're simply amending the description of something. We're not changing anything that we've.
No.
Mr. Chair, I'm more than happy to move that all previous references to Schedule 8 be amended to read Schedule 7.
No, it was in the minutes. Schedule 8 is recorded twice, and we dealt with the first one, and it should have been Schedule 7. We therefore need.
So right, I will therefore move that the minutes identifying Schedule 8 twice be amended to read Schedule 7 and Schedule 8 in that order.
No.
Because of the duplication, I think you've talked about Schedule 8, which is the outstanding natural landscape schedule. Because Schedule 7 was mistakenly labelled as a second Schedule 8, I don't believe we've actually talked about the outstanding natural features schedule yet. So there is no minutes or meetings to correct. We actually just need to talk about the outstanding natural features schedule, which is Schedule 7 for the first time.
No, no. Well, again, I was successfully confused on that issue as well.
Thank you, Rachel. Pay us to the rescue, as ever and always.
The other issue that I would like maybe for us to acknowledge or receive is the letter that the Mayor received yesterday from Associate Minister Hoggard and was tabled to councillors yesterday. Mayor Kircher, do you want to speak to that or? All right. Councillor Percival.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's my opinion after receiving that letter yesterday from the Minister's office in relation to proposed changes to the National Policy Statement in respect of SNAs. In light of the letter from the Minister's office, before we go any further, I propose the following motion. 1, that the committee seeks to pause work on the district plan until such time as the legislative changes proposed by the government have passed through Parliament, and 2, the officers prepare a report to the committee on the risks, benefits and implications of pausing work on the district plan. Beg your pardon? I can't hear you.
She'd like an email to Joe Ainsley.
Okay.
Mr. Campbell, well, but before we go down that track, Councillor Percival, I have spoken with Mr. Campbell this morning, and staff have an explanation. So I believe that I can take a seconder, but before we're going to move the motion, I want to allow Mr. Campbell to explain to him what he explained to me.
It's also worth noting, it might also be worth noting that if there is no seconder forthcoming, the motion will lapse.
Right, yes, you are correct. All right, so we have a motion moved by Councillor Percival. Do we have a seconder?
Can we hear the motion again, please?
Yeah. That the district plan review through you, Mr. Chair, that the district plan review subcommittee seeks to pause work on the district plan until such time as the legislative changes proposed by the government have passed through Parliament, and 2, that officers prepare a report for the committee on the risks, benefits and implications of pausing work on the district plan.
All right, I'll repeat the question. Does someone want to second that motion? I declare the motion collapsed or want of a seconder.
If I could just say some comments, Mr. Chair. The reality is there's some stuff we absolutely need to get changed in our current district plan. We need to make sure there's availability of land for housing and other challenges like that we've got. If we suspend work on all of the district plan, then that won't happen. It'll be more and more months than we need. What the government has indicated is that they are going to remove the requirements around the National Policy Statement for Indigenous Biodiversity. If there was something that was more targeted around that, and I'm happy to hear from officers on their thoughts on that, then, yeah, I think it is worth suspending that part of it potentially, but I would like to know what officers' thoughts are and what the implications are, I guess, of having maybe a two-staged district plan if we go down that route. I don't want us to go down and do a whole lot of work on something which gets overturned and we find out in a year's time that it was unnecessary. But equally, we don't want to create more cost by not doing something now and having a two-stage process. So a lot of considerations in there, but happy to hear thoughts.
All right. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Your response, Mr Campbell?
Thank you, Mr Chair. As we're aware with the new government's plans, there's quite a fast paced environment for all the changes they're making. We had some guidance come out last week, which I put around all councillors around the 3 phases of RM reform. So the first one they've essentially done, they've repealed the NBA and the SPA that the previous government had gazetted. It didn't actually mean much because it hadn't taken effect in terms of impacting our work on the district plan. So in the next phase, they are looking at 2 amendments to the RMA, one around fast tracking, that type of thing, which we are preparing a submission on to come to you. That's already underway. And that mirrors the COVID fast track legislation by and large. The second phase the second part of that is later this year, and then a bill passed next year to tweak the RMA. We don't know what the detail of that will be. And then the other phase 2 is amending national direction, which the NPSIB falls under. And as I've indicated, they're starting that fairly soon. The commentary on that has been around not commencing any new SNA identification and mapping. And we have taken that on board for LTP budgeting or annual plan budgeting purposes and dropped that budget item with doing that work under the current NPSIB because we know it's probably going to disappear, that requirement to do more mapping. The mapping we have done commenced at least 10 years ago, and that's what's already been through the committee. We've got the recommendations through for those existing SNA areas, which were all done with landowner agreement to be reported, mapped, etc. That's kind of history, it's been done. It's just in this process now in terms of being incorporated in the plan, so it's part of our plan provisions. Notwithstanding that, we still have Indigenous biodiversity provisions in the operative plan and are hoping to improve them by and large in the proposed plan. So we've got 2 suites of things there, mapped and identified SNAs with their provisions, and then biodiversity provisions that relate to other areas that are not mapped. So it covers both scenarios as required. The other national direction signal is the highly productive land NPS. So the highly productive land national policy statement. So that's being talked about in terms of the LUC3, which is the lower of the 3 high-class soils being dropped out. By and large, I think the motive for that is to try and facilitate more housing on HP3, LUC3 land. So that's possibly coming as well, but we don't know when that's going to happen. But other than starting this year probably, and then get it through to 2025, 26 to take effect. The entire RMA replacement bill could be the signaling passed by the end of 2025, so still some time away yet, but we work commenced on that. I think Minister Bishop sent a letter out last week asking for suggestions by tomorrow. So we've sent some ideas through to the Mayor, pretty limited in what we can suggest in that short time frame, but yeah, that's early days for that piece of work. So effectively the SNA stuff, which subject to the Minister Hoggard's or Associate Minister Hoggard's letter is signalling, yes, they're starting on that phase 2 work. And we already know that it's clear that they don't want us to continue identifying new SNAs, and there'll be some other subsequent changes to that national policy statement. We don't know what they are yet, but the main signal is don't go out and start doing more SNA survey work, which we're not doing unless landowners want it. Then, yeah, over the last few years, some landowners have asked us to do it, and we have budget there to do that to keep them informed. It gives them good level of information of what they have on their property for future reference. So yeah, that's where those things are at. In the meantime, we still have the RMA obligations to meet, the national policy statement obligations to meet. So we've by and large done that with the existing SNAs we've got. They're already been through this committee and ticked off. So we're not proposing to add any more to that as part of this process, at least anyway.
Thank you. I just, a subsequent question to that is thank you. So we're led to believe that all the SNAs that we've currently got in the plan have been agreed to by the landowners. And for the court, you're nodding in the affirmative, Mr. Campbell, is that correct?
Yes, so the work commenced, as I said, quite a while ago, and it was done on the basis that if landowners were happy for the identification mapping to be done, they allowed access. Some didn't, so we didn't go onto their property. They were then given a copy of that report as part of it, and there might have been some tweaks or amendments as a result of that. But by and large, everyone's had the reports. There's been no sort of pushback on those areas that they've had mapped and identified. Some landowners have then subsequently applied to the Biodiversity Fund and got some assistance for looking after those areas as well.
I was just simply trying to preempt the possibility that if there is a law change, are we likely to have landowners come back to us and say, in light of the law change, I no longer want this SNA on my property?
Yeah, and once the plan's notified, that submission process would allow for that kind of thing to happen. So they need to say, well, what are the reasons for not wanting it? Does it no longer meet the criteria, that type of thing? So we look at it in that sense.
Thank you. Councillor Percival, you had a question?
Yeah, if I interpret what you're saying, what you just said, you are saying that every landholder, whether leasehold or freehold, has been consulted on the change of the zoning and has agreed to what you've got. Is that what you just said?
So for the SNA work that commenced quite a while ago, we went out and said to landowners, hey, we think you've got some SNA and biodiversity on your property. Would you mind if we come and surveyed it and looked at it? And they said yes. They got a copy of the report, and they could either, try and get things changed or discuss with their ecologist on that. But essentially, they've got the report. They're happy for it to be done, the work, and it's now in the maps that you've looked at.
You just said you assume that they're comfortable with that, not that you've actually heard from them verbally, I'm happy with that. Am I not getting what you're saying correctly?
The first part is that they're happy for the survey work to be done. So when they go into the process, they know that there's going to be a map produced, there's going to be a report. So they're giving permission for that to be done so that they can understand what's on their property. So they're giving permission right from the start for that work to be done, because they know what's there by and large anyway. Yeah. So this is just for the biodiversity values. It's SNAs is only biodiversity, indigenous biodiversity. A lot of people talk about SNAs as meaning a whole lot of other things, which they're not.
Councillor Hopkins?
Mr. Chair, my view on this is that what we need to do is try and unpack the most cost and time effective way to move forward. Because it is clear that things are in a state of flux, And as I mentioned, I think at a council meeting last week or the week before, in relation to the heritage listings, there is a new direction of travel that has been signalled by Parliament or by the coalition government, which I think it is incumbent upon us as councillors and as planners to acknowledge and try and reflect. What I would like David and or Roger to advise us on is whether it would be possible to do one of two things, either to notify the plan, but to actually withhold from notification all components of the plan relating to SNAs, i.e. mapping and rules and regs, or alternatively to notify the plan as it is at the moment with some provision built into the notification that implementation of rules, identification of, classification of and rules applying to SNAs would not come into effect until, shall we say, for the sake of argument, the 1st of January 2026 or something like that. Now, that would mean that they would be there for an explanatory, on an explanatory and information basis. People could then signal quite clearly what they did want or didn't want. That might assist us to amend mapping and regulations in advance or alongside and parallel with the government's changes. And it would, I think, also potentially avoid a good deal of angst. Now, what I'm really interested in knowing is would such a provision in the plan be ultra vires? And if not, wouldn't that be the most time and cost effective way of dealing with the matter?
Just going to the last item there, Councillor Hopkins, the RMA rules with immediate legal effect already includes biodiversity, so it's a hard one to delay. I'd have to check whether that's possible. We could seek from the court to delay those rules with immediate effect. So it's already a default. It has immediate legal effect under the RMA. If we were to take them out, we would have to redo the rules in the plan, that whole package of rules in the eco chapter, to reflect that there's no SNAs and rejig those. So we have to come back with a set of new rules effectively for that and rejig. I guess what we could signal is, these are in the plan in a proposed form. Any plan is subject to changes in national direction. So if national direction changes that asks us to amend the plan, we can do that through a subsequent variation. So that's an efficient way of dealing with it, saying, look, put it in. If government changes the rules like they did with the parking ones, we simply take it out at a later date. So there's no additional cost rework. At this stage, we get it in, people can still submit as they would through the process. If there's a subsequent change, it could be this or the LUC3, then it would come out for a variation.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, fine.
I'm reasonably comfortable with that. But I suspect people less familiar with the process may still have anxieties. I think we can allay those by signalling that we are clearly aware of the direction of travel. And we have already, I think, telegraphed or indicated by way of recommendations from this subcommittee to the council that we are responding to both the parliamentary direction of travel and the sentiments expressed locally by people with regard to some of the encroachments on property rights that allegedly have occurred in recent times. But I would, however, I take your point about immediate effect, and that may be the case with NPSs. It would be interesting to see whether a district plan as a separate autonomous document has to absolutely mirror the RMA, and whether or not a district plan could possibly build in some staggered or delayed implementation of rules and regulations and maps. So accepting that your proposal is an effective one, I still would like to try and explore or try and get some advice from Mr. Cook or yourself as to whether the plan could include provisions that were delayed or deferred by way of implementation.
Thank you, Chair. Just adding to the discussion here, I think elected members also need to be mindful that we are several months away from now coming back to council with the proposed plan. We've got somewhere in the region of 70 resolutions to go through to change in the current draft plan. There's quite a substantial amount of work in there. So we will get a clearer indication of the direction of travel from central government over the coming months. And it may well be that that clarity has come in time. And if it doesn't come in time, then simultaneously to that work, we can investigate the possibilities with the Ministry for the Environment as to whether we can consider your options.
I'm comfortable with that. I don't know if you are, Mr. Chair, but thank you, Mr. Cook.
Councillor McCain.
Yeah, if I may, just listen to all this discussion, and I think we're talking about three different things really. We're talking about policy and what we must adhere to, and but we're missing the practical side of everything of what it does to affect those ratepayers. And the government has alluded to land rights, and we also know about the financial restraints and implications put on the farming community. But there is no mention at all of the cost. One way or the other side, the council's got to pay for the cost, or the farmer's got to pay for the cost to defend something he hasn't asked for. And I think that should be taken into account very seriously.
Thank you, Councillor McCain. I'll get you to respond, Mr. Campbell, but just further to the line of discussion around whether we're completely clear that the existing SNAs have been accepted by landowners. We've got landowners out there who are currently seeking independent advice, preparing their submissions for when this plan becomes proposed. That would suggest to me that they are not in agreement with what has been put on their title. So, I keep coming back to that question of, are we totally satisfied that the SNAs in place have been agreed upon by the landowners?
Well, no, we have got an answer, but it's not an answer that you or the chair may be entirely comfortable with. Look, do we want to do something like, I think we said with regard to the heritage listings at the council the other day, we said that people who didn't want to have their properties on that list had, I think we said 21 days to write and say, please take it off. Now, do we want to look at something, an option like that with regard to SNAs? I'm posing it as a question, and to my mind, if we have a problem with the degree to which these areas have been allegedly or actually consented, then let's lance the boil by saying, right, if by the end of April you want it off, then you've got a window of opportunity for this month to write to Mr. D. Campbell, private bag, Waiheke Island, please take my SNA off the list. It's just a suggestion.
Thank you. Mr. Campbell.
Yeah, so again, the SNAs is mapped were over a long time. So we had quite a lot of engagement with landowners that period to get permission to go and do the mapping. They've had the reports. We had some limited feedback on the draft plan when they went out, and I might ask Max to just speak to that, because that's kind of a barometer of people have seen the SNAs mapped, what the rules are, and they've given us feedback then. So I might ask Max just to comment on the feedback from the draft plan in 2022 that went out with the SNAs to give you an idea of the kind of level of acceptance or not.
Yeah, thank you, David. So through the chair, so when we went out with the district plan in 2022, we did receive feedback on a few of the SNAs. There's a landowner who disputed the significance of the biodiversity in the area. There's another landowner who mistook a SNA for a landscape feature and disputed it on the basis that it hadn't been assessed on the ground, mistakenly, as it turns out, because they were a new landowner to the property. And as a third, very small patch close to the Wainakarua, less than 1 hectare area of Kānuka forest that also a new landowner was disputing the significance of. So of the 350 odd significant natural areas across the whole district, there was 3 landowner feedbacks that disputed the areas. Granted, since then we have identified a further 30 odd that wouldn't have gone through that district plan process, but by and large, these SNA sites received very little pushback, particularly when you compare them to some of the other overlays that are notified.
Thank you, Mr. Crowe. We've had a fairly comprehensive discussion on the issue. I would suggest that the committee acknowledges the receipt of the minister's correspondence, but we move on to Schedule 7 if there's no one wanting to raise any further issues.
Look, I think I'm tempted to propose that we do give a window of opportunity, but I'd probably at this stage prefer to do that informally. I think rather than resolve this and possibly increase the burden on ourselves and on everyone else, and also extend further the delays in time. My view is if the committee indicated that there's an opportunity for individual people now to say, "Oi, I'm really unhappy about this," then that could and should be considered. I know that sounds a bit shonky, but I'd prefer to do it that way than formally move it, because that's going to commit a whole lot of additional resource to planning department. But if there remains residual or unexpressed angst and anger, let's accept that it's there. Let's accept the direction of travel is likely to see that anger recognised and compensated for in some way, and respond accordingly with the mapping now. I mean, you can put a thing can be in a map, it can be taken out of a map, it can go back in by way of submission. It's to some extent it's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. So I'm almost tempted to suggest that an informal mechanism might be a short-term informal mechanism might be the best solution at this stage. If there remains continued assertions of lack of engagement or consent.
The problem is, if we take on board what staff have told us, we've got less than 1% response in a negative sense. But before I come to you, Mayor Kircher, Mr. Cook.
I think, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to reiterate, I believe we still have time. We've got a large amount of alterations to work through.
Okay.
We've got a letter from the government, but it lacks a reasonable amount of detail at the moment. And I think, whilst I respect your proposition, that would just create more confusion and more sort of anxiety between the community and ourselves. And I would suggest that we review the situation, say, in 3 months' time, because we can get on and do the other work that needs to be done in the plan, and say just before June, before council breaks for its July break, we come back and we take a stock take on the situation then as to what information we've got from government and what direction of travel the council wishes us to take in preparing that part of the plan.
Mayor Kircher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Cook, for your comments. I think, we need to acknowledge the reality that the Associate Minister has taken the time to write a letter, which is far better than making announcements by media release, which he's been doing in the past. I think it would be good for us to formally receive that letter, but I would also ask for a more formal response from staff to it so that we've got something that's not just a part of discussion, that it's actually a further report on how we should respond at the moment, or pretty much what Mr. Cook has talked about just now, what delay, what weight we should create before we make final decisions. So in keeping with that, Mr. Chair, I'd move that the subcommittee receives the letter sent to myself, I assume, but from Associate Minister Hoggard, and that we request officers to provide a report detailing best actions from, for the time being.
Awesome.
In response to that letter.
Thank you, Mayor Kircher. Councillor Hopkins has seconded that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. No. Against? Carried. All right, so if we move on, page 691 in our agenda, I believe is what we're now calling Schedule 7, the outstanding natural landscapes.
Features.
Mr. Chair, I wonder in that regard if you would entertain a recommendation from me with regard to Schedule 7. I would like to move. You'll be aware that I moved one meeting previously, and I can't remember which of the various meetings we've had that it was, but I moved a proposal that we recommend to council that the maps relating to the outstanding natural landscapes be amended. And I believe an amendment commensurate with that in relation to the outstanding natural features is also would also be beneficial. So to that end, I accordingly move that the District Plan Review Subcommittee recommends that council amends the outstanding natural feature maps in the draft Waitaki District Plan to remove the area identified as outstanding natural feature 7 in the vicinity of the Waitaki River, and also the areas identified as outstanding natural features within the boundaries of the Parkside Quarry and the Conlin and McCulloch farms, for the same reason that the subcommittee recommended redrawing the boundaries of the outstanding natural landscapes maps, namely that the land in question is either cultivated or pastoral land, or land containing any other features required for agricultural or industrial use.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. Do we have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Percival. Is there any further discussion on that motion?
Well, if I may very briefly, the specificity of it may be surprising, and I know there's been some media comment in the past in relation to other specific matters. Clearly, outstanding natural feature 7 is a substantial area, but it is an area of cultivated land. There are centre pivot irrigators all over it. It is adjacent to the Waitaki River, but it is clearly no longer an outstanding natural feature, in my view, given the arguments that I have mounted with regard to the outstanding natural landscapes, with regard to the meaning of the word natural, and various other planning matters that I've, sourced in the 12 pages of material that I provided subcommittee members, in support of that earlier recommendation. In this instance, these are clearly, areas where the same issues of, cultivation, modification, introduction of, non-natural components arise. And, yes, we've been made aware of them through a variety of sources, but, I'm personally persuaded that the arguments that I put forward with regard to the amendment to the outstanding natural landscapes maps are equally applicable in the case of these outstanding natural features, and therefore, using a planning framework and a planning basis for my conclusions, I think the recommendations are valid and fair, a valid and fair reflection of the fact that these areas also meet the test that I argued applied in the case of the outstanding natural landscapes more generally.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. Can I just get a clarification? You're talking about area 7. Or, in what I'm looking at, that's referring to the Lindis Valley. Am I looking at the wrong?
Well, I understand you are. The recommendation identifies the outstanding natural feature 7 in the vicinity of the Waitaki River. If I've got the identification of it wrong, then I apologise. I'd need to ask a brief break to just sort of check. I don't want to waste, if we could adjourn briefly to clarify that, but my understanding is it's outstanding natural feature 7.
Mr. Craig?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, I've just noticed that the numbering used in the mapping doesn't appear to have been transcribed onto the schedule, but Councillor Hopkins is correct. ONF 7 is the Waitaki River.
Thank you very much. Phew. All right, Mr. Campbell?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just going back a step, when we consulted on the draft plan, there was around just over 39,000 hectares identified as ONF, and through the landowner engagement and feedback on that, as well as the landscape peer review with the second reviewer as agreed by the Rural Reference Group, that was amended down to over 29,000 hectares, so a significant reduction in ONF areas mapped. In respect of the Waitaki River, that is still the landscape architects recommended that we get a river geomorphologist to assist with delineating the extent of that, which we're still trying to chase to get that advice. So that may change the extent of the Waitaki River ONF. However, we've had, significant landowner engagement to amend the lines. In some cases, the landowners are still not happy with where the lines have landed, and they would have that opportunity through the submission process to further challenge that. So quite a lot of work's been done in this space for both these and the significant natural features. Weeks and weeks of field work with either Max or myself out with the landscape architects, and a fair degree of reduction of area. So any further amendments, we would have to go back and re-engage the landscape architects to relook at any amendments to any of the features, noting that the Waitaki River is still subject to the geomorphological advice on that one.
Thank you. I just make a comment in passing that does the plan belong to this district and this council, or does it belong to the landscape architect? Councillor Hopkins?
Well, yes, I was going to make a similar point. The assertion that we need to go back to the landscape architects is, in my view, problematic. In the earlier paper I produced in relation to the recommendation with regard to outstanding natural landscapes, I did argue that the economic analysis that the purpose of the RMA requires had not been incorporated within the landscape architect's assessments. Indeed, that it had been expressly excluded. And I was told at the time that this would be done, that this economic assessment would be done later. In my view, that's fine, except that it's not fine. And it also reflects a double standard within the Act, where the preservation of views in an urban setting is in my view, undervalued, and I have a video to demonstrate that. And B, the principle in urban areas is if you want to preserve a view, you actually buy the land to capture, to guarantee your enjoyment of it. Whereas in the countryside, if you drive past it, you're allowed to say, oh, I like it, I have a good memory of it. And the landowner has to actually adapt their operations accordingly. In this instance, I still think I'll place some reliance on the definition of the word natural. And I don't think cultivated, modified, agriculturally adapted land properly meets that test. Although I know that the planners would argue an alternative, the planners would present an alternative point of view. I just come back to the direction of travel. You know, it's all very well saying, oh, we'll go back to the landscape architects. I suspect Parliament is going to say, don't bother. And to that extent, I don't think we should bother particularly either. In as much as we've had advice, we are not automatically removing and deleting everything. We're making some changes based on feedback and an attempt to actually give the plan local input and character. And to the extent that landowners can submit if they don't like what's in the plan and in the maps, the landscape architects can submit if they don't like what's in the plan and in the maps. And personally, I'd prefer a map that might actually have the landscape architect submitting in opposition rather than a whole bunch of local people whose property values have been impacted by the changes. So I would like to see the recommendation voted upon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, fully respect Councillor Hopkins' view. I think it would be a hasty measure to remove it today. I think the opportunity exists for officers to review the information to hand and to provide the committee with more detail on that information than they perhaps have in front of them today, and make that decision. Deleting the Waitaki River as a significant natural feature from Waitaki district plan is quite a significant move, and whilst I fully accept that there's the opportunity to review it, let's review it over time where we've got access to the more detailed reports. Yes, some of those will be landscape architect reports, but I would encourage the committee to make that decision based on more detailed, accurate assessment of information that's available. It's just not in this tabled report.
Mr. Campbell.
Thank you. Just responding to the point around experts or landscape architects submitting on the plan, it's a very unusual situation that experts are engaged either by councils, landowners or other organisations to provide expert evidence to their position. So it's very rare for them to submit on their own outright to plan provisions. So it would be kind of unusual. As I said, that the reduction has been close to a third in terms of area. So the landscape architects have listened to landowners and have reconsidered. And this is the highest category of landscape features and something that the Act requires them to do. The criteria is set out and it's around, do these features meet the criteria? It's not a consideration of what's the economic cost or impact type thing. That comes later at the Section 32 analysis of the plan provisions, which will be part of the plan when it's notified. And that is around the suite of rules that we've worked through and agreed to for those features, which to allow for farming, maintenance of existing infrastructure, that type of thing. So it doesn't stop the features being used as they have in the past. By and large, they're harder to modify because a lot of parts of them are steeper or tricky to work. There are aspects that will spill out onto land that is modified or cultivated. That is part of the extent of the feature, but they can still farm and use those areas for farming. It doesn't stop that. So yeah, we've got to be careful about the sort of economic side of it. It's, as Councillor Hopkins said, the Act is treats that differently. So we just have to acknowledge that that is the approach in terms of identification and mapping. Excludes that, but the provisions that we put in place for that, which we've all worked through, do include that cost benefit analysis, and have also had assistance from the rural reference group in terms of what's workable in that respect. There will always be provisions that cause people to need consent, that type of thing, but it doesn't mean that they won't be able to do the activity, whether it's putting a building or some sort of infrastructure in that feature. It just means there's consideration of those landscape values, and we consent a lot of those regularly.
Thank you for that. I just, in passing again, I accept the rationale that in concert with the rural reference group, that 10,000 hectares were removed from the overlays, but that also doesn't negate the fact that in the current district plan, the overlays are insignificant compared to the 29,000 hectares that's still there. So I believe that it's our responsibility to scrutinise as vigorously as we can, because it is a major shift. Councillor McCann?
Yeah, look, my sentiments exactly, and I would go back to what you previously said, and Councillor Hopkins, as far as the Waitaki River goes. Within its banks, it's a controlled river. It's got dams and that do the flow. In the last 40 years that I can remember, the highest river flow has been 1,000 cubics, and it hasn't broken out over to what's been identified as that it's going to come under this legislation. There's been hundreds of thousands of dollars spent reinforcing that whole southern riverbank, and right at the minute there's 3 big dozers in there from Hoods, paid for by Canterbury Regional Council, fixing that riverbank. So we're impinging, or trying to impinge on some of the most highly productive land in the district and putting onus on it that doesn't need to be put there because it is already a controlled system.
Councillor Hopkins?
Mr. Chair, I'd suggest that it might be time to test the mood of the meeting by putting the recommendation. If I may, just briefly, I don't want to end up locking horns with Mr. Cook, Mr. Campbell, or the planning department. It does seem to me that the recommendation I have put before the subcommittee gives officers every opportunity to do what Mr. Cook has asked us to do, i.e. to produce shall we say, a contrary or contesting view or an assessment that might propose modification before the council votes on the matter, because all we are doing here today is recommending that council amends. Now, there will be an officer's report relating to this recommendation, and I have no doubt my recommendation earlier regarding outstanding natural landscapes. And in each case, I commit now to being absolutely open-minded and totally willing to look at any alternatives that are proposed that I think are meaningful and capture the mood of the moment nationally and locally. So I'm not, this is a step in a direction. It is not the full stop at the end of a sentence. And it might signal something to officers, but it also gives them an opportunity to respond and propose an alternative solution to the issues that have been identified. So on that basis, I move that the recommendation be put.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins, and I do commend you on your diligence in the planning space and also being so willing to offer advice to the chair, which I will readily accept and put the motion. Can we just have the motion repeated, please, Madam GA, so everyone understands?
That the District Plan Review Subcommittee recommends that council amends the outstanding natural features maps in the draft Waitaki District Plan to remove the area identified as ONF 7 in the vicinity of the Waitaki River, and also the areas identified as outstanding natural features within the boundaries of the Parkside Quarry and the Conlin and McCulloch farms, for the same reason that the subcommittee recommended redrawing the boundaries of the outstanding natural landscape maps, namely that the land in question is either cultivated or pastoral land containing any is either cultivated or pastoral land containing any other features required.
Correction, Madam Chair, it's either pastoral, either cultivated or pastoral land or land containing.
I'll go back. For the same reason that the subcommittee recommended redrawing the boundaries of the outstanding natural landscape maps, namely that the land in question is either cultivated or pastoral land or land containing any other features required for agricultural or industrial use. Moved Councillor Hopkins, seconded Councillor Percival.
Thank you. I think that's implicitly clear to members of the subcommittee. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. So are we moving on to the maps, or there's one chapter 9 or schedule 9, which we've just worked through, is that correct?
Just a question maybe for the chair. In light of that resolution, does it leave the rest of the schedule unapproved, or do you want to include the rest of the schedule? Not sure if that resolution captured the remainder of the schedule to be recommended.
Yeah, fair comment. Would someone like to move that we adopt the rest of the recommendations in the schedule?
Yes, I would. I've realised that what I did do at that meeting, I think 2 meetings ago, I moved a second recommendation after having moved the first one with regard to outstanding natural landscapes. I did move that second recommendation that ONFs remain as they had been identified, both within and outside the boundaries of that mapping. Today's recommendation will impact that. Whether we need, if you guys can just take that into account. So my view is we need to adopt Schedule 7. Okay, let's work this through. I move that we adopt Schedule 7 with amendments as agreed on the meeting of whichever one it was, and today.
No. So
you could be, I think you might be right. Actually, I think you're right. Yes. I'll move that we adopt Schedule 7 with amendments as agreed at the adjourned meeting of March 7 and April 4, 2024.
Do we have that next?
for clarification, so the resolution is to accept all the Schedule 7 items, except for the ones that the motion of today relate to.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct. Well, yeah, that's a better way to put it. Yes, I'll move that we accept Schedule 7 as proposed, except for the amendments agreed on April, at the meeting of April.
Do we have a seconder for that?
So that's a reviewed motion, councillor.
Yes, it is. On the suggestion of the planning manager.
Mr. Chair, do we have, I think you're going to call seconder?
Oh, yeah, I was just waiting for you to make sure that whether you want a clarification of the motion from councillor Hopkins, if you're happy with that. Do we have a seconder for councillor Hopkins' motion? I'll do that from the chair. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. No, there's lots more to do yet.
Yeah.
Would you like a cup of tea?
No, because we're going to lose our quorum at 11 o'clock, Madam GA, so I think it's appropriate that we carry on.
Mr. Chair, as much as I've got to leave, I'm going to be zooming in, so I'll still be here as far as quorum requirements go.
All right. Oh, thank you. Well, if that is the case, we could take a very brief 5 to 10 minute.
It's not set up yet, so it'll be another 5 before.
Oh, right. Right. So we will carry on, but in 5 minutes' time, we will take a brief amenity stop.
The bus driver just called conference call.
So are we moving on then to our schedule of rural scenic landscapes? The one before that? Or we've covered everything? Yeah. No, it's all right. We have covered everything. So we will actually be moving on to the mapping exercise. Yes. So we'll go back to school and just actually work through how we're going to do this logistically, because we have 77 maps. There may be maps to which no one has questions or concerns. If we can identify them and pass them, then it's done and dusted today. But then there are various degrees of from there where we go. Madam GA.
Not a very good picture on the screen, but just to walk you through this. So the idea is that by the end of the day, we have worked through 4 potential outcomes of each map. So we've got 77 maps in total. There are links to them in various stages of 20. So 1 to 19, 20 to 39, 40 to 59, 60 to 77. So those are the links. They're on the website for those who are watching on the live stream. So the idea today is for the chair to call each map individually, because that's what the committee wants to do. It wants to go through each map individually. So he will say, as an example, Zara, can I just have that? So he says, it's called map one. The first thing you have to say is, do you have a question? Do you want to make a tweak to it? Or do you want it to go into the substantial discussion of it? So if anybody has any questions on any map, it will not be registered in column one. It will automatically go over here. So the idea is that we'll get to the fact that nobody has a question on a map. That map number, let's say 4, that one is fine. So we do the whole 77 on what we call the first sweep. Everything that's in this column, there will then be a resolution to move and second that these ones have no amendments, they can be adopted. Immediately, we've done that motion. We move to column 2. Anything that anybody's got any questions on has come in here. Now, it may be that there's one question only, and it's a minor one. So if map 1 has one question, Zara's going to write 1, and probably the person who asked it. If there's questions on map 7 and there's 6 questions and there's lots of people, when we do column 2, we'll go through and we'll find all the easy ones, the maps that have got one question, and Mr. Campbell will be asked to answer that question. If that is answered, then there will be a wee box down here that map 1 has been ticked off. And it will form, these ones are now, questions have been answered, and these ones will now be in this resolution. That then, if this one, Mr. Campbell can only answer 3 of the questions of the 6, it will automatically be put over here because more substantial discussion is required and it cannot be answered today. So this is about trying to find out as many as possible that you can sort out. Anything else will have to go to the next meeting, which is the 18th of April, and another one will have to convene. So that's the process, so that we can minute it can be recorded, and Zara's going to show things. So thank you for listening, and we'll see how we get on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just, again, for members, we did receive an email on the Tuesday the 2nd from the governance advisor giving us the link to the maps. So again,
You've had them.
yes.
Just brush it out.
So on Tuesday, you would have received an email from the governance advisor, and it contains the link to click upon that will take us to the maps.
So if I can just speak to that too, Mr. Chair, the maps were originally put up on the website for the 18th of December 2023 agenda. So the links are there on the website and have been there since that agenda was first published in the middle or early first or second week of December. So the maps are the same. We have just moved the links from the 18th of December 2023 Council DPRSC meeting agenda page on the website meetings page, and we've copied them across to the 4th of April so that they're directly there for today. Thank you. I can hear.
All right, so you've got time to digest and get round how this works at the same time as you scoff your coffee and very plain biscuit in these austere days. So we get.
Are you adjourning?
Yes. We'll adjourn the meeting and reconvene, please. at 10:25 if possible, members. It's only taken minutes to download.
Working on that.
Stop thinking that way is a bad opportunity. This is only.
All right, welcome back, anyone who's rejoined us online, and to members of the public on the chamber, we welcome you. It's always great to see democracy scrutinised. We're now going to move in, members, to the maps one by one, and as we've previously discussed, it's going to be slow and arduous, but in the long term, it may mean that anything that is not contentious can be passed and moved. Mr. Campbell, do you want to be contentious?
No, I just want to be helpful. I guess in light of recent resolutions that affect particularly ONL, ONFs, and any SNAs that are still obviously to be approved by council or in that sense, any maps that include those areas would be, if they're accepted with no changes, but would be noted as accepted subject to any of those
Recommended
resolutions.
changes.
So just note that while the maps themselves, particularly the low number ones, cover a lot of those areas, we might say we accept them, but note at the start that they are subject to those other resolutions. So the map may change as a result of those. It's more a mechanical thing, but we don't want to say we're accepting the map without any changes when in fact might be changes.
Yes, no.
Besides wording.
Yeah.
what resolution to state.
Can do.
Well, the officer may suggest wording, but
Yeah.
it'll be a member of the committee that actually agrees with it.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just want to get the recommended wording now from officers so that I can write it, because it will go probably against every one of these. So I'd just like to know the wording now, please. Just tell me, you need to, because it needs to be.
That any map subject to a previous resolution of this committee where changes to a layer may result from that resolution, that map can still be, I guess, recommended for approval on that basis.
Chair, are you happy with that?
Yes, I think that covers off on, so look, again, to expedite matters, and just, I do want to say that the Mayor graciously offered to carry on with us on Zoom, but we are going to struggle with this mapping exercise because of Councillor Blackley's absence as well. So it is my intention, and I'm ruling from the chair, that we will finish at 11 o'clock today and reconvene on the 18th.
Mr. Chair, just with, yeah, I've been giving a bit of thought about the challenges we've got with quorum and so forth, not least because Councillor Blackley is out of action for a while, but I do wonder whether it's the subcommittee would like to recommend to council for the next council meeting that an additional councillor be added to the subcommittee with a slight change to the percentage on the quorum requirement to make sure that we can actually meet with, we'll have an extra person. We would still require 4 people to be there for the meeting, but I think that could just help us out when we're struggling for numbers at times, particularly because we're meeting on normal meeting days.
Yes. No, I think that's a very sound suggestion, Mr. Mayor.
So along those lines, Mr Chair, if you're happy to take a motion, I'll move that the subcommittee recommend to council that councillor McCone is added to the subcommittee and that the quorum percentage be amended from 60% to something else, to 55%.
I'll second that, Mr Chair.
The percentage is a problem because we need to do it in terms of people. So 55% is still 4. 60 is still 4. It's more than 3. So it's either 50%, which is relevant for other subcommittees, or it is either 3 members or 4.
Mr Chair, we adopt the delegations, we can determine how it's done. We set out in the delegations that we did adopt last year that the percentage was 60%, which meant that basically that 4 people needed to be there. If we leave it at 60%, we need 4.2 people, which is essentially 5 people. So we are looking at amending the percentage. The number would then stay at 4. So of what currently we have 6 members, with 4 being needed, it'll be 7 members with 4. But if we don't change the 60%, it'll be very confusing because it's very contradictory to whether it's 4 or 5. I'm just trying to keep it simple.
No, I appreciate that, Mr Mayor, and I think that the bottom line is we're talking about a mechanical issue here. The principled issue is that we recommend to council that as councillor McCone has judiciously sat through all of these hearings, that we add them to the subcommittee.
And made a valuable contribution, may I add.
So do we have a seconder, Mr Chair?
Yes, yeah, so moved Mayor Kircher, seconded councillor Hopkins. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried unanimously. So, Madam GA, we can tidy up the mechanics in terms of before it goes to council. Is that correct?
Yes, based on that, if we're going to a membership of 7, then it will go back to the requirements of the Act and basic standing orders that a subcommittee is, if it's a committee of an uneven number, then it automatically becomes, so if it's 7, it becomes 4. So that's just standard practice. Thank you.
No, thank you very much for that.
Could I ask for the details from the standing orders just on that particular one, because I think it's done under the delegation register, but I don't want to doesn't need to be an argument here. I just ask that be followed up with some. I'd like to know where it is, because I don't want to make a mistake, and I don't want people to think I'm making a mistake. But if I am, I'd certainly want to know about it.
No, that's fine, Mr Mayor. We can get that explanation. All right, so let's start with our mapping exercise. I trust that everyone's found themselves some maps, and it will come as an outstanding surprise to the subcommittee that we're starting with map 1 and working through. So my question to the subcommittee is, does anyone have a question regarding map 1? And the answer, you can't yet because you haven't been formally added to the subcommittee, councillor McCone. But you can have a question, but however, I do have a request from councillor Blackler for a question on map 1. We move along to map 2.
Sorry, let's hear the questions, Cameron.
Well, unfortunately, because councillor Blackler is indisposed, he's given me a list of the maps.
Is it not possible for us to hear the questions today?
we haven't got them from the
I
councillor,
would see, right, so.
because he's stuck in his hospital bed without.
No, that's fine.
Mm.
Well, can we hear it's councillor Coates?
Righto, councillor McCann.
Through you, Mr Chair, I think first, bearing in mind that you wanted to get this list of 77 down to as few as possible, we're going to do a first sweep from 1 to 77. If there's a question, it automatically goes to column 2 or 4, and you just keep going. So there's a question on 2, so that won't be staying in column 1.
Yes,
So the
correct.
next thing is map 2.
So we're going through a
The
mechanical
This is a
process.
mechanical process
So-
of weeding out the ones that you can resolve today.
We have 2 questions on map 1 to come. Right, we go to map 2. No, you can't ask a question. You can only register your interest.
Yep.
To question it. So we go to map 2. And again, councillor Blackley has a question.
Okay, 3.
Map 3, councillor Blackley has a question. Map 4. Sorry. Oh, yes, map 4. There are no questions on map 4.
No, councillor Fox.
Yes. Yeah, so this is the,
2, map 4. Well, isn't it?
yes. So we're on. Yeah, it's because each map has several overlays on it. There's a subset. Is that not correct?
For each area.
Yes. So are we going to take then that we just leave that there is a question over that whole area?
Yes.
Right. All right.
The map number of the page,
Yes,
4 maps.
yes. So we move on then to map 5.
Okay.
We will have a question on map 5.
The guys.
So we move to, and I'll try and help by actually giving the heading. So map 6 is the Ahuriri. No questions on map 6. Yeah, so, well, if you look on the top left-hand corner, for example, we've moved to map 7 and it goes Benmore, Ahuriri. And then there are 4 different maps under that.
Yeah.
Well, it's under the heading.
Yeah, have to find it now. Yeah, that's under map 1, map 2.
You don't.
Sorry,
3.
map 3, in that area.
It's this one.
Yeah, but
They've gone through the last
so it's map 6 that you have a question on. Back to the original 3. Yeah, it's already up there.
Yeah, 3's already done.
Thank you.
So at the moment, Mr Chair, we have map 4 and map 6 with no questions, and they are in column 1.
Correct.
The next one is map 7.
Map 7. Councillor Blackley has a question. Map 8.
Yep.
Oh, well, that's all right. It's already noted in the questions. Map 8. In the Lindis. You will have a question, councillor McCann. Right.
Could all members of the committee please put their microphones on, and when you have a question, say, I have a question on map, whatever. Okay, so at the moment, councillor McCone, you are not a member of the committee. You can have a question, but just to remind you, you do not yet have a voting right because that recommendation has to go to the council meeting. Thank you. Okay, 8.
Right, we move to map set 8, which is the Lindis. There are no questions on that.
Okay, 8 is going to column 1.
Did say he had a question, but he's changed his mind on that.
Who is he?
Councillor McCone, you don't have.
No, he was going back to a previous. So map 8 has been clear. We move to map 9, Otomathpio. Clear. Map 10, Aviemore. Clear. Map 11, the Hawkton Range. Clear. Map 12, Awakino. Clear. Map 13, Currell. Councillor Blackler has a question. Are you going to have a question as well on map 13? Yes. So there's two.
Yep.
Thank you. We move to map 14, the Hawkton Range again. Clear. Map 15, Domit, Waitaki. Or Dumet. Yes. Councillor McCone will have a question.
Yep.
And Councillor Percival.
Right.
We move to 16. The Otakite, Councillor Blackler has a question. "17 Georgetown, Councillor Blackler has a question. And Councillor McCone. Map number 18, Waitaki Bridge. Councillor Blackler has a question. "19, the Ida Range. Clear. Oh, and I've now got to go to my.
That completes the first link set. So we now move to the second link set, which is maps 20 to 39. No. Just go down. I want to be able to check that against what I've nurtured. Okay, so the second link is maps 20 to 39. Everybody got that, including online?
Got to go back to your links.
So while we're doing that, just to confirm that from the first set of maps, Mr. Chair, we have map 4, So I'm going to get Zara to check these, that what is recorded on the whiteboard is the same as what I'm recording in the minutes. Maps 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14 and 19 from the first set of maps from 1 to 19 are now in column 1 and will form part of the resolution.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So ruled.
All right, we move to map number 20. Tyburn. Questions? We move to map 21, Livingston. Councillor McCone has a question. We move to map 22, Corriedale. Councillor McCone
Councillor
again.
McCone, can you please speak? Can you put your microphones on, please, gentlemen, and just say, I have a question. Thank you.
I have a question.
And
Thank you.
Councillor Percival.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. Might the request to members of the committee come from the chair? Because it does seem to me that at this stage, we've got about 3 different people running the meeting.
We are trying to ensure that it is recorded correctly, councillor. And I can assure you, I am in the chair and firmly ensconced and will remain in the chair. Right, we
This
move.
process was agreed with the chair before this meeting.
We move to map 23. Councillor McCone has a question. We move to map 24, the Kakanui Range.
Oh, I have a question on 23 as well.
Okay. 24 again.
So moving on to 24. Questions on 24?
Um,
I take that there's no questions. We move to 25, Karu Hill.
Yeah, I've got a question.
Yes, the 2 Corriedale councillors got questions on that one. We move on to map 26, Oamaru Corriedale.
Mr. Chair, I think I have a question on this map or the next one. I'll reserve my position on both, so I'll have a question on 26, please.
Certainly, councillor Hopkins. We move to map 27. Back into the Kakanuis. At the top end of the esteemed Waihemo district. We move on to.
Is that a clear, Mr. Chair?
That's clear. We move on to map 28. No questions, that's clear. We move on to map 29, Herbert.
Oh, shit.
Named after the Herbert of the same name.
So that's clear. We move on to map 30, McRae's. That is a clear. We move to 31, Shag Valley, Waihemo. That is a clear. We move to 32, Hamden. That is clear. We move to 33. Moonlight. That is clear. We move to map 34, McRae's.
Mr. Blackler,
Sorry?
you keep an eye on him.
Yes, yeah. That is clear. We move to map 35. That is clear. We move to map 36. That is clear. We move to map 37, the stone burn. That is clear. We move to map 38, Goodwood. I might indulge myself with a question on map 38.
That's very daring of you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Map 39, Buckley's Hill.
Yeah. Question.
Question from councillor Percival. And that brings us in a very timely manner to the end of that subset at 11 a.m.
So through you, Mr. Chair, if I may repeat this, Zara, please clarify that you had the same numbers in column 1. These are no changes, no amendments. In the second link set, map set 20 to 39, we have clear in column 1, maps 20, 24, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37. That is all.
That is correct. As I've said previously, I intended to close the meeting at 11 a.m. And we have achieved that at 11:01. And
Adjourning the
we will adjourn the meeting of the 18th of December. And again,
on the 4th of April.
and we will resume at this stage on the 18th as calendared. I do thank staff and members for their participation, and for those of you who have watched this or will watch it online.
Meeting